Welcome everyone to the episode 20 of the Office Hours podcast. Episode 20 feels like quite a milestone. So I'm quite happy about that. I'm happy that Mo has been with us on this journey. And, let's make episode 20 special.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also very excited about this milestone. 20, you know.
20.
Yeah, that's a yeah, 1, 2, 3 to 20. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
that's quite a bit.
So yeah, it's quite a bit. But how have you been? How have you been the
Uh,
past week?
yeah, it's been good. It's been good. It's getting kind of, you know, it's sort of oscillating between calm and crazy all the time a little bit. I'm trying to become more comfortable in my more of a managerial position, and currently I feel like I'm just freaking out and everything's on fire all the time, and I don't know. I don't know what to do half the time, and I don't have answers for the questions I should have answers to. So it's very frustrating, and I feel like I tend
Mhm.
to fall back to my engineering chops just because I have experience there and I know what I'm doing. So if I do that, that's familiar and that's like calm and regular. So whenever people ask me technical questions, I like jump in on the opportunity to kind of help them out because that I can kind of regain a little bit of my sanity back. But when things start going toward more managerial aspects, I was like, oh my god, this is so crazy. So yeah, definitely a change in that sense. And I don't know, hoping that I'll live through it to tell the tale.
Of course. But what does it feel like to, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but I'm curious, like, what are some of the skills you need for this like managerial roles? I can speak English today.
Yeah, if you figure out, you need to tell
Mm-hmm.
me. I probably should buy some books, and I've started reading some stuff on it, and it's just reading. Last episode we talked about like learning and reading books for 6 months before you do anything, and I kind of feel like in the same situation, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
more of a trial by fire. I can read things and I can sort of capture various interesting tidbits about it, but in a heat of the moment, are they gonna bubble up in my head and be like, "Hey, you can do this," or is it like 6 hours upon reflection? You're like, "Oh yeah, I could have done that," right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think right now it's mostly prioritization, managing my time, and keeping track of things. I think I'm pretty bad at like keeping track of things, and I don't know if I need some sort of external crutch. Like so far, I have my little pad where I record, but so far it's kind of similar to what we talked about last time, where I just keep adding things to it, but it's rare that I take stuff off of it, and it's again I'm in that mode exactly that we were discussing last time, only not on a tech side, but rather on this other side, which is new to me.
Yeah, but you see, like, I think, yeah, maybe probably because it's new, because I think it's not so difficult. Because the levels in tech, I think at some point you start like junior to intermediate to senior, and I feel like when you get to the level where you're actually like in the managerial role, I think most of this will come from like the experiences that you've gained throughout the line.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it is or not because I don't know what it feels like to be in this position.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just curious if it's like the
Right,
same level
right.
of experience, like you drag along, or you have to do a new. It's a new, completely like type of experience
It
in
is
this.
it is kind of a completely new type of experience. I think it's almost like I have to unlearn most things because instead of having super deep focus on one thing, I have to keep like a bird's eye view of many things. And as soon as you start focusing on one thing, you kind of move your focus away from everything else that also needs attention all at the same time, right? Because if I'm building a project and if I'm working on something, I can focus on that one thing. But if I have a team of people, like let's say 5 people who depend on me, and I need to be aware of what everybody's doing, how stuck they are in what they're doing, what they need to get them unblocked, how what things that they're doing fit in the grand scheme of the overall project. Uh, all of those don't mesh really well with this. Hey, let's sit down, let's disconnect from the world, let's bootstrap all of the information that I have about this one thing and try to figure it out, right? It's completely opposite. And so having technical skills definitely helps because, again, on that level, technical skills help you communicate in a language that other people understand, right? And you can translate between, you know, product owners and developers, right? You need to match the impedance and match their languages effectively. So that definitely helps because you've been on that side. You know exactly what is possible, what is well, maybe not possible, but like what is less feasible, right? And all of these things. It's mostly the all of the non-tech skills that are completely lacking for me right now, and I'm sort of slowly building it up. And of course, what's the best time to learn these things? It's not when everything's calm and you just have some time. It's like, no, it's just everything's on fire and you like sink or swim.
Yeah. But now my curiosity is going towards the like, what are the non-tech skills that
Hmm.
that you feel like you need in this role?
Time management. I think time management and, again, ability to have like this dispersed set of things to keep in your mind's eye at all times, maybe even across multiple projects, multiple teams, all the different people, all the different tickets. Like, it's just taking care of 30 small things versus one or two big things. And it's a different mode for my brain. My brain is like, I don't know what to do with this. It tends to fall into, something interrupts me with some question, and instead of kind of like having all of these things sort of float in there and one thing kind of comes to the foreground and I'm like, oh, okay, give some answer. It's like, wow, it goes full screen. I go all in and I start analyzing and I start like turning on like the engineering mode of getting down to the bottom of the problem instead of more like kind of picking enough crucial information and basically delegating. It's like, okay, here's what you need to sort it out. It's not like, how can I spend my next hour figuring out how to make it work, but rather, what is the smallest amount of information in the shortest amount of time to kind of nudge that person to find that answer on their own.
Ah, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I think
Mm.
I understand it now, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess I
It's
haven't,
a
yeah, I haven't really had a chance to think about it myself and properly verbalize it. So this is like my first attempt of verbalizing it. I mean, I had a
mm,
conversation today with my manager, and
mhm.
she's being very helpful, trying to get me to that state or to that next level. But yeah, I haven't had a chance to sort of fully kind of um, meditate on it, so to speak, and see if I can see any patterns. So far, it's just it's like being in the inside of a, or maybe not on the inside. I was going to say on the inside of a hurricane, but on the inside of the hurricane is actually peaceful. It's on the periphery where everything's like spinning 500 miles an
Mm,
hour. That's what it kind of feels like right now.
yeah. But also, do you feel like right now in your team, do you feel like you have like a diverse level of experience, or like the reason why you have to like support many of these people is because of their level of experience? Is it based on their level of experience or based on your knowledge of the project itself?
I think there's a little bit of that. There are definitely people who are experienced, but we've also just onboarded a bunch of new people, and they are in their first months or even weeks of being on a team. And so, there's still definitely a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have people my other problem, I guess, is that I don't know when is the good time to leverage them. I should do it sooner, and I don't do it sooner. Like it should be like, oh, I shouldn't be the one helping you with this. Somebody else who has the experience should be. And you know, some guys on my team, they're stepping up and they're taking care of things for which I am, you know, very grateful, because that definitely helps me. But then I am good at leveraging my knowledge and expertise, but I'm not good at leveraging the collective knowledge and expertise on a team so far.
Mm, I guess that's where the actual work is, like the
Yeah,
managerial work is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
right. If I were good at it, then I wouldn't have problems with it. And you know, because I'm just learning, it's clearly the state
Yeah.
of affairs right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Good one. Good one, Vasili. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
So, actually, to get into today's discussion, what I really wanted to talk about today is something that I've seen a lot of people talk about it. I mean, even we have memes about it flowing everywhere on Twitter. You know how you see those memes about like front end, back end, and then you see the back end looking really bad, or like maybe like it's the bad side and the front end looks colorful and something. But and then I saw this meme about some guy putting on a shirt like a suit. The front looks good, but the back was empty. It was just naked on the back. So, so I was thinking like, why is it always like this? Because in reality, in my own experience, I think the if we're like using this meme to describe like the state of the code base, I think it's just mostly shitty on both sides, you know? Like I think it's just it's just different kind of different types of shit, you know, on both sides. I don't really think that it's always like very good. But I don't know. If you're using like the appearance, I don't know. I don't think it's also fair to use appearance because there is no way to see the appearance of the back end.
Yeah.
Maybe it might even be have better appearance than some front ends. Who knows? So I'm just curious, like, how do you feel about these memes when you see it? Because I know
Yeah.
you've been in both sides too. Who start who
I
start like
yeah.
that? So
I think you're not wrong. And you kind of got me there because I was thinking you're gonna go like, yeah, front end, you know, and then back end is kind of shittier. And it's like, no, everything's crap. And you're right, everything is kind of crap. But so I think there's like the visual portion where like your design system comes in, your colors, your fancy graphics, photos, like all the cool looking stuff. Then there's front end logic, which can be crappy, and then there's your back end logic, which can be crappy. But the only thing people see is the design, and we are suckers for pretty packaging. So, you know, what things can people appreciate when they see the website? Just how it looks, and they might subconsciously get frustrated if it's kind of slow or clunky. But I think we talked about it before, where we're so habituated to these things being shitty that we don't even know, like we tolerate it. We're habituated to it. When a site is crappy, we're like, come on, site, you know, get your
mhm.
stuff together. I need to order some tickets or something like that. But because it ultimately still helps people achieve their goals, nobody's standing up, flipping their table, be like, you know what, screw this. I'm not using this website anymore because of how garbage it is. And maybe there's one person who's like, screw that, I'm not doing it anymore, I'll do it some other way. But we don't have a mass contingent of people where like 100,000 people just stand up and be like, you know what, I feel like some site that allows me, I don't know, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but like whatever, the site doesn't let me do the thing, or it frustrates me every time I do the thing, therefore I'm publicly saying, you know, F off and walk away. Because if that were to happen, you know, in any other business, if customers basically tell you, you know what, we're not going to buy from you anymore, and then they don't, that tends to adjust how you do business. whether for bad or for good, for better or for worse, I guess I meant to say, because, you know, we've seen some really kind of dirty underhand tactics of some people trying to like ruin businesses and whatnot. So I'm obviously not for that. But I think in web, the signals don't necessarily correlate. And I mean, I don't really interface too much with people who like collect metrics. So maybe they do all of those things. But people, like, okay, maybe a little bit of engagement drops off and they're trying to do these things. And the other problem with that is that, you know, they do their A/B tests and they're like optimizing for some local minima that might not be actually a good sweet spot, you know? Like, you know, you have your chart, there's like a little bit of a dip here and then there's a bigger dip, but you never leave that small one because it takes more effort to kind of get over that hump. And so you're staying perpetually semi-shady, right? But
Yeah.
for most part, people still keep using it. And if they keep using it, why would we do anything about it? It's like, oh, you know, you need to renew your passport so you can travel. You're going to wait for 30 minutes for that freaking page to reload. What, are you kidding me? Like, of course. Like, what else are you going to do, right? You're a captive audience.
Yeah.
So for things
Yeah.
where people are captive audience, you can do whatever you want and they will remain because they don't have any other options.
Yeah. You see, this is the like we understand this, yeah. But me, I'm curious now, like why, if everyone knows this and this is the truth, why do people have this type of memes to say like, oh, front end looks good? But I guess like maybe just because of the design. And recently, I was doing I had some meeting about like how to improve the code base and write better codes and improve whatever these improvement meetings. And we were looking at some things in the code, and then I saw like even in the front end, like it's just there were some things that I wouldn't even want to mention right now that we saw, that we're just really like, wow, someone did that. Okay, and then to me, I can see how it affects like the performance of the website and all these kind of things. And I still like I know this is not even the first code base that I would see like this. There are even in different teams and all this kind of things. But I'm just curious, like, why do we romanticize like the front end as like, you know, being perfect? Is it just because of the colors? What do you think is important to users? The colors or the performance? I mean, we get like the captive audience, but at the end of the day, like we don't. These memes should not get this amount of um, attention like the way it does because it just makes it look like front end is more organized than back end. But I don't think it's true in any way.
Yeah. So there's like two examples, which could be correct or could not be correct, but there is well, first, maybe I'll do the small one first and then we can talk about the big one. But the small one, you know, the website called this is a motherfucking website.com?
No,
No. Okay.
no.
So it's a website written
Should
in
I check
bare
it?
bone HTML, just no CSS, just standard markup, H1s, paragraphs.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. There's nothing else.
Interesting.
And it's like, it's a website. It works. You can read it on any device. It doesn't
Mhm.
require anything special. It works with all accessibility technologies. It conveys the information it needs to convey. What else do you want from it? Obviously, it's a joke, but you know, in every joke, there's quite a bit a portion of truth embedded in the joke, right? And
True.
then the second example is, you know, I mean, a lot of people switch to Facebook Marketplace, granted, but a lot of people are still using Craigslist. And Craigslist has been looking like ass for the last 20 years. It basically virtually hasn't changed. And people are still using it. So, you know, fancy design can be nice. And I guess companies have their brand image that they need to, you know, put everywhere to keep their trademarks and whatnot. People don't use it because of design. Design should be the aid to make it better to use, right? Like if it has excellent design and it's just crappy, like who cares? Like I never went to a website which didn't function and be like, well, I keep using it because it has great design. It's like, who cares? I mean, okay, so people care, but at the same time, it's not the deciding factor. Maybe I'm just maybe I have the engineering mindset, and like if I were to go down to my basement where my dishwasher or where my washing machine sits, and it has those like 3 knobs and 2 buttons, and I would print some nice thing like a sticker with some beautiful colors and pictures and like some fancy fonts, would my washing machine become any better at washing my clothes? It'll look nicer, but for the purposes I'm using it, it matters not. As long as it does the job and the design, the UI is intuitive, and I have a good experience using it, and it doesn't leak water and doesn't set my house on fire, I'm really happy with it. I don't really demand anything more from it.
As long as it's not burning anything. But you see, like, who do you hold more responsible, front end or back end? Who do you think is more responsible for performance of the website?
These days, probably front end, because everybody is building using some type of reactive framework. And I get that part. It gives certain, I guess, affordances. But mostly the thing is, all of the affordances of React in terms of building sites and building applications, they are for developers. They're not for the end user. End user doesn't give two shits if it's React or not, right? But we want to be able to have components to break things down and compose it, and we want to have some sort of state management library to make the data plumbing easier. All of those things are for us, but they likely slowing things down for the person actually using it, right? So I think that developers have created this culture where the democratization of development is taken very seriously. We have all of these evangelists for different frameworks and technologies because they want more developers building more apps to, I don't know, make Google and Amazon more money. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But there's clearly a growing trend in amount of developers being onboarded every year, and in order, because again, like if you're programming in an 8080 assembly, or you're programming a PDP-8 using those little switches and a button at the front of the machine, the developer experience, I don't know, maybe those people really like that. They just got used to it. And again, if you get used to it, it's fine, right? It's a skill issue. If you feel uncomfortable doing it, it's probably just because you suck. Get good. Get good, scrub. And I think there's this a little bit of this culture of, we have to make it nice for the developers to get them to use our thing, right? It's like we had some code bundling tools, but everybody hated on Webpack because of how slow it was. So we created this other thing that's faster, but now it has like all these other problems. And we're trying to please developers way more than we're trying to please the end users, in a sense. It's like, I'm pretty sure there's some developers who are starting right now, and some framework that is actually very performant comes out, and they're like, well, it doesn't have a Visual Studio Code plugin, so I guess I'm not using that. I'm pretty sure people like that exist, right? And so in that pursuit of making developers very happy, we created these sort of gardens of tooling, which are still not great, by the way. They still suck mostly. Like, why the hell does it take like a minute and a half to compile a website that's just converting some text into some other text? It's not even compiling it. How come? Sorry, let me just finish my point. But like, how come John Blow's compiler can take like, I don't know, 150 pages of source code and translate it into native CPU instructions in under a second, and we're here chugging along with like TypeScript and Webpack, farting around for 5 minutes before anything becomes usable? Like, that's just still shit DX. So we haven't even achieved what we set out to achieve. It's still crap, at least on the web end of things.
That's true. I agree. Like, I think this is very, very, very true because, like you said, there's a lot of things that we do on our end. But you see, the same thing can be said on the back end too. But I just think maybe nowadays, more and more, we have more of this issue on the front end. But I think another thing that I was thinking just now as you were speaking just was like, I think the backend also might have problems sending the information to the front end, which can take more time, be the reason why the pages are loading, a bit slower than it should be.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
at the end of the day, we will not really blame front end. I don't even know how to really express this. I feel like everywhere around, everywhere you look, it's just like,
Mm.
yeah, something is going on that should
Yeah.
be done
Well,
better.
it's not just the front end or just the back end, right? I remember, like, I think 2 episodes ago, we talked about it, where it's all the stuff in between. It's like the Docker container running in a Kubernetes cluster behind an Istio endpoint, behind an API gateway, behind
Yeah,
Cloudflare, behind this, behind that. So there's like all of these layers in between. And so, I was recently talking how, we're building this next app and we have to leverage server-side rendering because of SEO. And now we have all of these tools and all of these frameworks and all of the layers and everything, and the end result is literally what I could have built in PHP in half the time, and it would have been twice as fast and didn't require any of that crap, right? And I could have done all of those things in PHP like literally freaking 20 years ago. So we made this giant loop around and arrived from the viewpoint of the end user. Nothing changed. Well, maybe like some browsers do fancier things now, but even then, the end user doesn't care how browser renders a particular thing. Back in the day, if we had to do rounded corners using custom pre-cut GIFs to compose the rounded corners on things, and they looked rounded, and now they look rounded because we have a CSS border round property, border radius. Like, does the end user give a shit about that? No. So from the end user's perspective, we haven't really moved anywhere. It's just gotten slower and crappier, and now the websites, the bundle for an average website is like several megabytes worth. And thank God that everybody's on fiber now, because, man, let me tell you, even in early cable days, it was like painful. I remember, and again, I'm getting to reminisce about the good old days, but I wanted to download a video game mod off the internet, which weighed 100 megabytes. And I was like, God damn, 100 megabytes. Jesus Christ, that's going to take all night, because I was on dial up. And I was like, please, God, don't let the line drop, because if it drops in the middle of the night and I have to restart it tomorrow, like, I was anxious. I was waking up in the middle of the night to go to my computer to make sure that the connection didn't drop. And I was like waking up
100
several times in
megabyte.
the night. Yeah, 100 megabytes. 100 megabytes. These days, some games are basically 80 to 90 gigabytes. And in terms of gameplay, they're slightly prettier, but in terms of gameplay, they provide basically the same experience as that 100 megabyte mod did back in the day, right? And so, again, we're making these circles, and we're arriving at a marginally better, like, it's not like a circle, it's more like a spiral. So it still kind of goes up. Like, if you look at it from above, it looks like a circle, but there is some change there. It's just from certain angles, you don't even see that change. And a lot of people, I believe, look at it from the angle where they don't really see the change, or they don't see as much change. So they probably are asking, like, what the hell is this all for?
Yeah, but you see, how did they sell these tools to us then? Like, what was promised to develop with like these kind of tools? If at the end of the day we will still be in this position, how did they get developers to build applications with these tools?
Yeah, I think they promise performance, but you can get performance and then, complexity eventually strikes. I mean, it's like, I think like game dev is a good example because no matter how powerful hardware you're going to throw at them, they'll find new ways to saturate it to the max and bring the whole system to a grinding halt. Like, regardless. There's like some games that are poorly optimized. And, I have not the last gen graphics card right now. I have the previous gen graphics card. And those games just never chug past like 30 FPS just because they're designed crappily. But at the same time, I remember buying a graphics card to run Crysis, and it's like, yeah, that thing is struggling because at the time it was a very fancy graphics card, but Crysis was also a very fancy game that managed to saturate that thing completely. And so if when React just came out, it's like, oh, we're so fast, we can do 60 FPS in a browser. And they had these demos of like thousands of tiny squares rendering on screen at 60 FPS, right? But to render thousands of squares on screen for 60 FPS, it's like a single for loop, not a big deal. But when you have a massive business application with huge complexity, you're not going to get 60 FPS out of that, even though React claims it's theoretically possible, and here's a demo to prove it. So it's kind of, it's not like bait and switch. It's just we've been given shiny tools and we kept pushing to see where their limits are. And now we're like reaching the limit, or we have reached the limit. And so we just, we kept pushing and we've arrived at the end point.
So they promised us a performance improvement, but really it's not really improvement. Because did we have like back in the day, do you remember when everything was built on the olden HTML, CSS, the basic ones? And do you remember this type of performance being an issue that was discussed in the community then? Or we have more of these issues now?
I think the networking was the bottleneck, because your HTML loads and then you see your images slowly like loading in, right? So you couldn't even experience performance because of just how slow the networking was. And so when we got really fast networking, it felt like magic, because again, there was this massive leap in end user network speed when everyone went from dial-up to cable or DSL or something like that, right? Before fiber even. Some people back in the day had fiber, but those were like few and far between. I remember we had like a couple of buildings downtown, high rises, that were wired up with fiber like from day one, and they were enjoying like ridiculous internet speeds, but they also were paying quite a bit of a premium for it as well. But for most people, the websites were still designing for dial-up when all of a sudden cable and DSL became available. And so those things was just like so fast. And everyone's like, oh my God, we have so much room for activities here. How can we saturate all of this bandwidth and make, our websites prettier with more things, better quality pictures? I remember back in the day, you would see some website and it would be loading an image. And because somebody didn't know any better, they're like, JPEG? We don't need no stinking JPEG. We're just going to take a BMP file that's like 30 megabytes for a tiny little image, because it's just no compression at all, and just chuck it in there and like, hey, the DSL delivers, who cares? Or, they get some really, really high res image and then the browser scales it down to a little thumbnail, and then you wonder like, why the hell does it take so long to load? So I don't know where I was going with this, but I think it's just like, we finally caught up to the speeds. Like, I mean, even now with fiber, people get a lot of speed, but at the same time, now, back in the day, there was like one computer, and most cell phones, even when they had Wi-Fi, they had like some crappy 802.11b that was like slow in itself. So even if you had a couple of cell phones and a computer on your Wi-Fi access point in the days of early DSL, they weren't able to saturate it. But now everybody has a phone that has like Wi-Fi 6 in it, and everybody's streaming Netflix in 1080p from like 5 devices all at the same time and browsing, watching you. So like that network gets saturated with all of the stuff, you know. Back in the day, what was that? Yeah, I don't remember that senator's name. I think he passed away a bunch of years back. The one that said the internet is just it's not a big truck, it's a series of tubes. And you know, we're finally saturating all of the tubes.
But do you think we'll go back to the basic? So, for example, in the front end, let's to keep it to the front end. Do you think there will come a time where we actually start like preferring to develop the olden the with the olden these technologies, like the basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever that we're using, or there will come a time where these frameworks will start to actually see the issues, and then they will become better.
I don't know. Entropy is always increasing, so I have no hope in these frameworks to get better. They just get more complex. They have to attempt to fix for various inadequacies, and in that race, they create more complexity. So, you know, complexity begets more complexity, and it just snowballs up until everyone says, okay, we had enough fun with this framework. Let's play with this new shiny thing. So I don't know if you heard, but now there's this thing called HTMX, which is kind of like
Yeah.
data attributes for HTML that promise a lot of stuff without having to write any of the components and stuff. And now it's kind of shiny. A lot of people are like pretty excited about it.
And you?
I haven't had a chance to try it. I looked at it, I saw it in someone's video, and I was like, interesting. But I don't know enough about it. It feels like it's been done before, you know. It's because uh like when prototype and scriptaculous came about, and it was like, yeah, we can just attach event handlers to buttons on a page using these special attributes. It kind of looks like this almost, maybe with some more built-in functionality. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's nice and fast and simple now, but like give it 5 years and see what monstrosity it grows into then, you know?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
nobody's immune to complexity growth. It's kind of cancerous in its nature. It just keeps the cells keep dividing and complexity keeps growing. And so maybe this is a motherfucking webpage.com is kind of the chemo that just keeps all that cancer at bay, where you just
Yeah.
go stupid minimalist and things still work. I don't know. I don't really know
Yeah.
what to say here.
I have a question. About software aging. Do you think we have framework aging?
I think it's an opposite problem. It's the fact that the framework keeps going forward, but applications don't have enough pace to keep up. It's it's like Alice in Wonderland, like Alice and the Red Queen. It's like in this place, in order to stand still or in order to stay in the same place, you have to run really fast. And if you want to get anywhere, you have to run even faster. So that's kind of the situation where you're running as hard as you can just to stay in the same place, trying to catch up with all of the things that are happening. And
Mhm.
so to stay ahead of that curve, forget about it. Like
The reason,
when was the last time you did like npm update to all the latest versions in your project?
um, I mean, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But the reason why I asked this question was because you mentioned how you use like HTMX as an example. Like
Mm-hmm.
right now it's nice and fast, but given in the next 5 years, it will get to a point where maybe for scalability reasons or robustness, whatever reason, it can become like a bit more complex like the other frameworks that we have right now. So I was just trying to understand, like, does that mean that these frameworks age as they try to become more robust, or they just get to a point where, or this is just like a life cycle thing, like, you know, they become in the beginning they're good, they fix the performance issues like that we want, and then as time goes on, they just become old and then they become the problem now. So that's why I was asking, like, Does it have like similarities between like software aging and this kind of issue that we're talking about?
Yeah, it probably does. It probably does. I think that, again, the entropy is always increasing and complexity in software projects is always increasing. And the only way you can stay sane is to just say no to everything. And like, this is the thing. This is what the thing is. The thing is not going to be different. It might do things differently inside, but from the outside, it's still going to remain, the thing, to cut off the complexity growth.
But
Because, huh?
mhm. Does that not keep us like in the same spot? Because I think software itself, like this industry is probably one of the industries that I know about that everything moves at a very high speed. Like the technology, the hardware is changing, so like the software is also trying to catch up every day. So like many things keep happening and you have to keep learning things. But if we stay stuck in the same thing, like we do this thing and we just like keep it like this is how we do this, and we just continue to do it because it works. Do
You
you
know,
think that that will hold us back at some point?
I remember this story about this tire shop in Poland that still runs all of their operations on like some really old Amiga or TRS 80 or something that's been installed there in the 80s. So like all of their shop's operation, their client database, their scheduling, it's all run on this custom software from a computer made in 80s. And it still runs because it does the job. Like they don't see the need to update it because it still does everything it needs to do. It's rare because in our world, obviously, if you're in an industry like a tire shop, you might be installing different types of tires on different types of wheels, but ultimately not that much changes conceptually. In terms of its operation, everything is still same, right? And again, are we creating this complexity for ourselves and then we try to solve with software? You know, it like maybe now that we have software,
Mhm.
people are more likely to change things because software is easier to change compared to, like, on one hand it gives us incredible things, but like if you have some sort of machine shop that's producing some tool and you have to retool it for this other thing, it takes a ridiculous amount of effort. But if you have a software product and you need to modify it to do a slightly different thing, it's much easier compared to, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm talking completely out of my ass and I'm full of shit. But it feels
Go
like
on.
it. It feels like it that, you know, how hard could it be? We just needed to do the same thing slightly differently, right? And in case of retooling a machine shop, they would just be like, not like, to make that tiny change is not worth it. It's just cheaper to stay the course. But in software, it's like, yeah, it's cheaper to just change the tiny thing, and then one tiny thing upon other tiny thing upon other tiny thing. It just keeps on growing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But you see, like I said, yeah, um, hardware keeps improving, and it's not software is just a part of the ecosystem, right, for us. And um, you mentioned earlier, you gave an analogy about how internet became faster. Like we now have fiber, and we can have load more data faster, on the internet. But as these things keep increasing, like improving on these other sites, do you think the tooling, like the tools that we use to do our own development, should they also improve? Should we also look at like improving them? And are we doing that right now even? Or do you think that if we had stayed, let's say like if we had continued developing the way we're doing it before frameworks, we would be we would have better performance right now in the front end.
I mean, this may be a semi hypocritical answer, and I'll explain as to why. But I still use Vim. My
Okay.
my tooling is Vim. Vim and Tmux are my 99% of the time is the type of software that's running on my computer where I actually do things is Vim and Tmux.
Wow. Okay.
And the reason I'm saying I'm a little bit hypocritical is because I do have language server integration into it, so I get some niceties out of the language server. So it's not just like Notepad, where it's just completely
Okay.
dumb. But anytime I have to do anything, like anytime I have to open IntelliJ IDEA, I feel like shooting myself because, oh my God, that thing is just slow, annoying, eats like bajillion gigabytes of RAM. And like, it doesn't really give me anything that I can't get out of my current setup. So I don't even bother open. I don't even remember last time I opened it.
Interesting.
And again, we like shiny things, right? And I mean, I don't know. It's human nature. Uh, people keep making things for fun, and then other people look at it and be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna do that now," and then it grows when maybe it wasn't even intended to grow in a ways that it did. So I think we just have to live with it and try to do the best that we can, because I can't necessarily say that everything, like, on one hand, everything feels worse, but on the other hand, everything is also much better. It's kind of two parallel processes.
I
Everything's constantly getting better and crappier at the same time. It's just, I think that
agree.
the viewpoint is shifting, and from this point of view it's gotten massively better, but from this point of view it's gotten massively crappier. And
Yeah.
it's just like people need to adjust their attitudes and enhance their calm about these things, myself included.
But but on the other hand of the better, like where it got better, what do you see as like the improvement on this side?
Well, like, take a look at the browser. It's basically the primary application for most people these days is the browser. Like, none of those things were possible back then. Everything was an application. You want to edit text, you need a text editor. You want to do a spreadsheet, you need a spreadsheet editor. You want to edit images, you need an image editor. Like, so it's almost like, so many things got subsumed into a single device. Like, your phone now does all of the things. Most people don't even use it as a phone anymore for most part. It's like the phone the phone bits they're like the vestigial organs in the phone, because everybody just talks, use it, like the whole actual cellular voice thing. A lot of companies now, they do like, it's called VoLTE, which is like voice over LTE, whereas they take the voice, they digitize it, and they send it over the internet, as opposed to through the voice protocol that the cell phone supports, because it's cheaper that way, and you get better voice quality and stuff like that. And it's like, uh there was this joke. It's like, you know like, look at this guy. He's saying that he has a telephone over the internet, and we still have internet over the telephone, right? And so, like, all of those things got aggregated into one device. It's a camera, it's an alarm clock, it's a news reader, it's a music player, it's your calendar, it's your email. Everything is in there. So the things that you have to carry with you at all times back in the day. If you're a tourist back in the day, you have this big honking camera hanging off of you. Maybe you have like a little camcorder to record videos with, because like the
Mhm.
photo camera doesn't take videos, and the video camera takes crappy photos, so you need both, all in the phone. The watch, everything is in there. And the same thing happened in PC. Everything's in the browser now. It's just like, whoop, everything got sucked in there. So in that sense, the amount of technological breakthrough that needed to happen for that definitely, like, things got way better with that, because browsers used to be hella slow. Now you watch your high definition videos, and you communicate with friends in real time. You can even play some games in the browser. The experience is still kind of shit, but like, you know,
Yeah.
you can do that too, right?
Yeah. Coming to like the lower level now, like in terms of like code base, do you feel like the tools that we have right now, say for example, the way the backend communicates with the front end communicates with the backend now, do you feel like it's gotten better, or it's it's going down like the wrong
So
path now?
here's an interesting thing too, right? Because
Mhm.
we went from HTTP 1 to HTTP 1.1 to HTTP 2 to HTTP 3. And again, for most end users, they never seen any difference in that. And apparently HTTP 3 is supposed to be massively better because, you know, TCP/IP is a really old protocol. It really shows its age. It shows the design choices that were tempered by the constraints and realities at the time. And we can do things better in terms of like less congestion and faster delivery and like all of these things. So things are definitely getting better, but they're not really noticed by 99.9% of people because they never see that. Like the whole meme about the tire fire, like the Disneyland, the top of a pile of burning tires, it's still valid because nobody sees the insides, right? And it can be as shitty or as great as it is, and no one really is going to pay attention to that. So our tooling, on one hand, it does get better, but on the other hand, like IntelliSense has been part of Visual Studio for so long. The autocomplete. I mean, language servers made it a little bit nicer because you're no longer chained to a specific ecosystem and everybody can do their own thing. So again, I can use Vim and I can use a language server for PHP or Python or TypeScript, and I'm not constrained really by having to buy I don't know, some IDE for specifically for Python or some IDE specifically for Ruby just to get that, right? So that gotten better. In terms of everything else, we've put so much complexity on things that it's gotten much worse. And okay, so again, another anecdote from way back. I kind of started my development efforts using a pirated copy of Borland Delphi 4, which was the Borland's IDE for building native apps. And it's Delphi is basically Pascal. And I remember like you press run and it just appears because Pascal compiles really fast. It's just blazingly fast. Like it was immediate. And then, maybe on the same disk that I bought at some, swap meet or whatever, there was also a copy of Borland Visual C++, which is basically
Yeah,
same
I
thing,
used that
only
one.
for C++,
I did
right?
that. Yeah, yeah.
And like you open both of them, you have this window and like you drag a button and you double click on a button and you write a handler for the on click call to give you like alert, hello world, whatever. You
Yeah,
press it
yeah.
in Delphi,
Blue
boom.
screen.
You
Yeah,
press it in C++, it goes and compiles for like 2.5 minutes,
yeah,
and then and like,
yeah,
why? How can this thing be
yeah,
this fast and this thing then be this slow? And maybe, in a very complex application, the C++ version probably is faster at runtime, which is taking care of the end user. But I really like the fact that this thing was taking care of me as a developer, even though I wasn't even a developer back then. But the fact that I can just press it and it immediately shows up,
yeah, yeah,
I felt the warms and fuzzies for sure because I don't have to wait. And now we wait more and more and more. And at the same time, the weird part is okay, with C++, I as a developer wait for it to compile. But then once it compiles, if I done my job right, it's going to be insane fast, like as fast as possible for the end user. But now with like Node ecosystem and Webpack and React and, all the bundlers and minifiers and compilers, the fact that it compiles for 15 minutes does not mean in the slightest that it's going to be fast for the end user. It's still
yeah.
going to be a pile at the other side.
I mean,
So we
yeah,
lost that, right? We didn't gain any speed, but we lost that. And like right now I see like, oh, are your build times slow? Use Basil by Google or use Turbo by Vercel. And it's this other thing that I have to put on my machine that does all this other crap, and it's kind of has all these rough edges, and it doesn't solve my problem because they're not solving the problem that, like, hey, TypeScript compiler is written in TypeScript in a way to facilitate the type verification. It's not built for fast output. So we're not going to solve the fast output problem because we don't want to rewrite the entire TypeScript compiler in Rust and then maintain it in parallel with Microsoft. That's crazy talk. So we're just going to build this crutch on a side that supposedly solves this problem, but maybe it does for like a 3-page Hello World application, but like in a 1,500 file project. Is it going to be better? Maybe, but it's going to bring all of this other complexity on top of it. And I don't want to deal with all of the extra complexity. I want my tool set to be minimal. That's why when I was reading about Zig, I was kind of inspired by it because, and I guess once we see Jai when it finally comes out, that would be an interesting thing because it's one binary that does everything. That's why, I'm having a little bit more fun with Bun. And then again, it has its rough edges. It wasn't as smooth, but it promises like, hey, you have this one thing that just does everything you need to do. And, that's the thing that compiles, runs, minifies, bundles, like installs your dependencies, runs your tests. Like it's all in one. So I can just get one thing and it gets me where I need to go. I don't need 37 different build tools to make my life slightly more bearable, and the end result is still going to be crappy in the end,
Yeah. So
man, what a rant.
you know, this is like a final question, yeah? How, if you have a genie right now that will grant you all your wishes, and then you get to build your perfect stack for front-end development, your perfect stack. You can modify what is existing, you can add whatever you want. What would it look like? Your perfect stack for front-end development, including your IDE if you choose to use one or whatever.
If I had a genie, I'd just ask him to retire so I don't ever have to write any code ever again. Are you kidding me? Screw that.
Fair enough, fair enough. That would be a good use of the genie. But
Yeah.
about the stack though, what would you? I'm curious. What would it look like?
I just remembered this thing, which is completely unrelated to the whole thing, but there's a series of games called Far Cry.
Yeah, I
And
know that.
right? But the thing is like at the beginning of most Far Cry games, the later ones, not the first two, but I think maybe starting with the fourth one. In the
Yeah.
beginning of the game, when you start, you kind of meet the antagonist of the series, and throughout the dialogue and everything, you basically have this moment where you can just pick up a gun and start shooting people, and then the game starts, and your adventure in the game starts. And you can also choose not to do anything, and then the game ends with this alternate ending where you just didn't do it. So like in the latest game, like Far Cry 6, where it's like this pretend
You played
Cuba.
6.
Yeah, you can hop on a boat and just drive to United States. And then the game ends and it's like, oh, your resistance buddies have been captured by the government and executed, and you're just chilling on a beach drinking a cocktail. And it's like, not my problem anymore. Not my problem. Don't care. Don't care. So, if I had a genie, it would not be my problem anymore. But in all seriousness, if I were to use my wish on improving everyone's lot
Yeah.
in life, oh man, that's I don't even know. I don't think that I don't even know if that's like possible in one wish. I have like so many. The thing is too is it like, do things that bother me bother enough other people. And
Maybe.
if I do it my way, is it gonna bother, like, is it gonna make life better for like 5% of people and make it more miserable for 95% of people? I don't want that kind of power, you know.
You know, imagine that it's like, if it's good for you, it's good for everyone. But I'm just curious, like for you, because the reason why I actually asked this question is I think so far I've learned about how you see the current stocks and like the limitations and like how you would do it differently. And you sound to me like you probably be a minimalist in this regard. Like you just want do exactly what should be done, and you don't want the extra add-ons. For example, like you said, IntelliJ gave you headaches, and for me, I'm like really like excited about it. I'm just like, oh, this is beautiful. It's like it's so good, you know? Because like I'm a Visual Studio guy, and since I started like working more with like Ruby now, so I use RubyMine. So
Mhm.
ever since I started using RubyMine, I'm just like, "Ah, wow, this life is so good here, you know? Like everything is in one place. You don't need that many plugins or like extensions, you know? But you know, we work differently, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about what you would want in your stuff. Like, would you want to also continue to have like this like component kind of like development process, or you would prefer to have like, you know, your exact design to be like
Yeah.
the this is a motherfucking website kind of type, or like what would you
Yeah.
want
I
in your
think I
stuff?
think I have an answer for you in terms of the one thing that definitely would make things better. I don't know how, it's probably possible, but to make it so that the freaking CI jobs don't run for however long they run, and so that they can run in matter of seconds. If every CI stage can run in under a second in my pipeline, I would be a happy man. Because that thing
But
drives me nuts. It's like, oh, I changed one line of code. Now I have to wait for 20 minutes for the whole thing to rebuild, to rerun all of the tests and do all that kind of crap. It just takes freaking forever. And we have like some tickets in the queue waiting to be merged, but because the CI is busy, you know, and we have to rebase, that's just like, oh,
yeah. Mhm.
like that one thing. Like if I had a Genie, I'd be like, hey, Genie, make the freaking CI builds fast. And like, I mean,
But
fast,
what do you
fast.
think is missing there? What do you think is missing there? Like all the compilations? Yeah, I think in the CI job, I think there's a lot going on. There's
Mm-hmm.
test, there's links, there's probably postman test if you have that too. Like
Oh,
there's a lot going on there.
we don't even have those, and it still takes 15 freaking minutes.
I mean,
Well, I was talking to a colleague of mine about this recently, and well, like CIs are very vulnerable to like it's a hostile environment. If I give CI agent too much access, I can take over the server. So they have all these security constraints. They have to containerize everything. Everything needs to run in Docker in its own like sandbox. And then those things take time to bring up. Like we were talking about, do you know the language called Erlang?
yeah. I mean, I never used it, but I know about it.
You know of it, right? So
Yeah.
Erlang compiles to bytecode, similar to kind of like Java. It has its own virtual machine called Beam. Maybe not anymore. Again, I haven't done it in a long time. There has been some. I really like that the compiler they have called a high performance Erlang, and it's abbreviated to hype. I think it's pretty sweet.
Okay.
But
I
anyway, so
mean,
it compiles to this runtime to this
mhm.
bytecode, and there's this project called you know about Zen, XEN, like the virtualization software. It's
No.
kind of like
No.
similar to VMware or QEMU or all of
Ah,
these
okay.
things.
Yeah.
So there's this guy that he built this thing called Erlang on Zen, where you can take a compiled Erlang application and it will boot up into a fully functioning application in a couple of hundred milliseconds. Skipping, like it skips the OS, it skips everything. It just has just barely enough of Bootstrap to run the app, like the network stack, that whole stuff. But then what you can do is when a network request for your page comes in, you boot up the application fully in under 100 milliseconds. You serve the request and then you shut it down. You don't wait for your VM to come up, for the OS to boot, for the user space to boot, for your application to boot, for your application to become ready to serve requests. No, it's like, blup, serve, shut down. And I think that thing happens in Docker images. Half the time, it's just like preparing execution context, spinning, So I think in some ways it can be made fast, but then it will not be safe, because then I can run sudo rmrf / and the entire CI server gets wiped. So if we had some magical way of bootstrapping a fully running VM in under in a couple of 100 milliseconds, because the other thing too that could make it work. I don't know if you ever played emulator games on a console emulator on your computer. Like if you have like a Super Nintendo emulator on your PC and you're just playing Super Nintendo games. And I had this thing where it's just like save state and load state, and it just takes a snapshot of the entire system, and then you press load state and it immediately just jumps back to that point in time. It's like that Rick and Morty episode where you had a button where you can like jump to a previous time.
No.
So if you can just like resume a fully running machine with everything immediately, and then just do the thing and then shut it down so you don't have to wait for 5 minutes for it to become online, that would be really good. And there's actually a couple of operating systems, theoretical operating systems. I don't believe they were ever finished. There's this OS development called Phantom, which has like a bunch of interesting principles. Man, it's been a while since I looked at it, but they do some clever things with like memory. So everything is like constantly snapshotted or something, and like I don't even remember anymore. It's been like probably 5-10 years since I looked at it last, and I don't think they actually made it that far. But it was from snapshotting and resumption perspective, it was really interesting. So something needs to happen in that domain.
But like when you mentioned like the states thing, it kind of made me think about like, I think, okay, coming outside of like these two sides, like the softwares that we use for the work, but to talk about like stacks like React or Angular, I think we have, this might be the idea behind like the states management life cycle. Or how do you even call that? When you have like different life cycles, and like you have like different states for each of the components, and like all these kind of things. I think that's probably what they were trying to do, no? What do you think?
Maybe I think it's a little bit different. I actually just had another idea. You know the whole multiverse trope, and like
Yeah, I mean,
I should just have a multiverse. Like multiple parallel universes, slightly different from one another. So if I could just like teleport into a universe where my build job is already complete and just continue from there, that'd be good.
How would you see, like you can do that, but how do you get there? I'm not saying it's not possible, but how? Because it has to build. That's actually the point.
No, but there like if we assume multiverse, there exists a universe in which I have pressed the build button 15 minutes ago and I can just jump into it where it's already built. Like Doctor Strange style.
That wouldn't be computer anymore. That would be something else. Like, how do you do that?
I don't know, but
Doctor, what's his name? What's that guy's name?
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, Doctor Strange would know that.
Yeah, exactly.
You probably know it.
So Doctor Strange is probably pretty good build engineer. He's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna jump to this other universe and download the artifacts that are already compiled. Like however long Chrome takes to compile. He's just like, yeah, sure, give me 3 seconds. It's like, and here's the USB stick with the new compiled Chrome from this other universe.
I mean, if that could happen, that would be so cool, though. To be fair.
But imagine you birth an entire universe into existence just to get your copy of Chrome, and then effectively what type of butterfly effect is that going to have, on the inhabitants? Are you dooming them to some horrible events? Are you ready to take up
Hmm.
that kind of responsibility?
Hmm. There is always like pros and cons to all this thing. Like, yeah, there is always pros and cons to all these things. I mean, everyone thinks that they come up with a solution to the problem, but the solution becomes the problem
Yeah.
at some point. So there is always a, you know what? That's interesting because
Yeah.
this is like, by the way, actually, I remember I was listening to certain people talking about technologies and like how nobody has ever built a tool with the intention that, oh, this is going to be a problem. Everyone built their tool with the intention like, oh, they're
This is going to be a
solving a certain
solution. Yeah.
problem. Yeah, this is a solution. And then it returns becoming a problem, like different software applications or whatever happens. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I can see, like, even if you use a genie, to be honest, you'll probably be pissing some other people off too.
Yeah, there was this character in a science fiction book by like Soviet sci-fi writers, the Strugatsky brothers, and they had one character that was super powerful magician, virtually like no limits on his power, except that anything that he does must be good for everything, and so he was
Mm,
effectively paralyzed because you can't do something that not even everybody, like everything is benefiting and not harmed in any way. So it's,
it's impossible.
yeah. But he was
I mean,
infinitely powerful. He could not use his infinite power. It's a paradox in a sense. So it's like, yeah, if
yeah,
you start writing that new software thinking you're gonna save the world, think again.
yeah, I mean, but at least save the good part of the world. Like
Yeah.
save like at least like 50%.
Or
Aim for 50.
yeah.
I mean 20%, 30%. What percentage do you think would be fair? Even
See,
if like
we're back to the whole, if you find one virtuous man in Sodom and Gomorrah, would you spare them from
they do.
the doom? Yes, the brimstone
Mhm.
and eternal fire. It's like, how many people is a good cutoff criteria for that type of stuff? I'm
Good
not
question.
prepared to answer that question. It's
That's a
it's
good
it's a
question.
it's way above my pay grade.
Yeah, that's a really difficult one. I mean, you can't really tell.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's like for the philosophers. I don't know. I
yeah,
don't know. But yeah. Anyway, thank you, Vasili. It's really nice talking with you again today. Like always, it's always fun getting to chat about this kind of thing.
yeah. I had some other
Thank you.
topics that came out in conversations with other people about
Oh yeah,
AI actually, but maybe we can leave it for another time
for sure,
because
for sure.
it's been a pretty good episode. I was raving and ranting like a maniac for half of it. Maybe it's clickbaity enough to get the views. Who knows? And if you have some opinions on it, leave a like, leave a comment, join the Telegram group. I'll plug the Telegram thing here. And yeah, that was episode 20. And I heard, I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I heard on pretty good authority that if you have produced and published 20 podcast episodes, that puts you square in 1% of people in the world with podcasts. Not necessarily by viewership or by subscribers, it's just by the amount of content that you've produced. A lot of people apparently quit way before that happens. So it's going on my resume. It's official now. Well, whenever
Yeah,
this gets released, and Mo, as well.
you know,
So
official
GG.
podcaster.
GG. Professional podcaster 1%. Oh,
Yep.
we did reach 50 subscribers. So thank all
Yeah.
of you guys who did subscribe.
Thank
That's
you.
pretty awesome. I mean, yeah, here's for I think we were talking during episode 10 that our next goal was 50. So 50 is
Yeah.
quite some ways away, but we did reach
I mean,
20. So that was also a milestone. Maybe next one is 25 because that's like a half point to 50. So that would be pretty good too.
yeah, we have 5 more to do then. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Well, with that in mind, Thank you everyone for being with us. I hope you had a lovely time. Thank you and have a great night.